Welcome back to Calculated Risk. I am Tyler Shoemaker, joined as always by Kelley Ford. And week 8 is upon us, and we've got a huge slate. We've got some major marquee games ahead this weekend that are going to really shape conference title races, CFP race, New Year's Six implications. We've got it all coming this weekend. So I'm really excited. Kelley, good to be back with you. What are your initial thoughts here on this slate?
Initial thoughts, Tyler, are one, anytime I'm talking to you means we're talking college football, and that's going to get me excited, and I'm going to get pumped for it. But two, diving deeper into this Week 8 slate, there are some really high-profile games, and we're going to talk about them here on the episode. But there is a ton at stake in these various conference races, in the college football playoff race now at this point starting to heat up a little bit as people start to turn their attention towards that with the CFP rankings now just 2 weeks away. So there's just so much happening. We're at that point of the season where teams kind of are who they are. The power rating models are really dialed in at this point. Resumes have a solid foundation. You can still add to them, of course, but you're not going to see huge jumps in most cases. So it's almost you are who we thought you were kind of time of year. And man, we are deep into conference play, which makes it super exciting. And there is so much on the line across the country, all these different conferences. I'm excited to get into it with you, man. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, and we're going to hit on everything from the MAC to the SEC. So we've got a full slate ahead. So let's get into it. Our first marquee matchup that we're going to dive into for the weekend: Alabama versus Tennessee in what was last year a great game that came down to the wire. Tennessee won by a last-second field goal. Alabama in a revenge spot, which is not very common, obviously, in the Nick Saban era. Kelley, why don't you kick us off with this game? Let us know what the KFord ratings have to say about this one.
I'd love to kick us off, Tyler, and here's why. Two things I love most about college football: upsets and rivalry games. This game always checks at least one of those boxes. The third Saturday in October. I mean, the name hits you in the face. You can't miss it. You know what it is. Last year, though, it checked both of these boxes, and I'm excited to see if it can do the same this year. It has a watchability score of 9.5 out of 10. It's my number 2 game of the week, and it's a top 20 regular season game of the entire year by my watchability metric. I have Alabama number 7 and Tennessee number 21 in the most deserving rankings. The Crimson Tide are number 7 in record achievement. They're number 13 in relative scoring margin, while the Volunteers are number 21 and number 18, respectively, in those metrics. However, only 5 teams can improve their resume more with a win this week than Tennessee can with a win in Tuscaloosa, where the average top 25 team would have a win expectancy of just 30%. So while Tennessee is number 21 right now in the most deserving, a win would do a world of wonders for them in that metric, and they would skyrocket up those rankings if they're able to pull it off in Tuscaloosa. It's a big if, though. The model has Alabama minus 7.5. It's a 71% win expectancy for the Crimson Tide. That said, though, Tyler, Alabama's current power rating of 21.3 and their corresponding ranking of number 10 are both season lows. And Tyler, this is the first time the Crimson Tide have been number 10 or worse in my power rating since 2008. That was Nick Saban's second year in Tuscaloosa. That's 15 years ago. That's the last time the Crimson Tide were this, quote, bad relative to the top of college football in my power rating. It's been a long time. But as I've said consistently on this show and on others throughout this year, mainly with regard to Alabama and Georgia, but it applies to everybody, the Crimson Tide don't have to be better than the previous versions of themselves. The Crimson Tide only have to be better than the teams that are on their schedule here in 2023. And as things stand, that's exactly how the model is viewing this Alabama team, better than their opponents, at least on paper. The Tide's offense is currently number 23. The defense has been really efficient this year, Tyler. They're ranking number 5 nationally now for me. And that's bad news for Tennessee. Well, it's bad news for everybody. It's bad news for Tennessee because they're playing them this week. And this is the best opposing defense that the Vols will play all year based on my current numbers. And to make matters worse, Tennessee is currently at a season low number 22 on the offensive side of the ball. This is a top 5 unit for me coming into the year. They're still good. They just haven't been elite like I thought maybe they would be. I understand they lost a lot off last year's offense. I still had high expectations for this offense. They haven't quite lived up to those expectations. They're still good, though. This offense is at a season low, like I said, but the defense for Tennessee is at a season high. They rank number 14 on that side of the ball. My numbers give the edge to both defenses, but the Alabama defense is the only top 10 unit in this game. That, plus the fact that this game is in Tuscaloosa, could be the difference for me in this one. I talked at the top about the leverage that we have across college football in these big games. This one is a good example of it. Alabama currently has a 70% chance to win the West and an 11% chance to make the college football playoff. With a win, those numbers improve to 75% and 16% respectively. But a loss makes it basically a 50-50 proposition for Alabama to even make it to Atlanta, and it all but eliminates the Tide from CFP contention, as it would be Alabama's second loss of the year already, and we're still in October. Tennessee currently has a 14% chance to win the East, and while a win improves that to 23%, a loss drops it to just a 9% chance to make it to Atlanta. Bottom line, I have Alabama minus 7.5. It's a 29% chance that Tennessee earns its first win in T-Town since 2003, Tyler.
Wow. Yeah, that all checks out. I think we're pretty much in alignment here as far as how we kind of see this game playing out. The line currently, I don't know if we mentioned this, the line currently sitting Alabama -9 with an over-under of 48.5. I project Alabama as a 3.5 point favorite with a total of 47.5. So I think we're both showing some value here on Tennessee as far as the line is concerned. I've got Alabama as my number 14 overall team. They're number 9 in my resume rankings. Tennessee, number 17 in the power rankings, number 21, just like you have them, Kelly, in the resume rank. It's interesting. The one real discrepancy here I think that we have is on the Alabama power rating. I've only got them power rated at a 15.2, so quite a bit lower than you have them. I'd have to go back and check, but this definitely is the lowest they've had in recent memory. I'd have to look at my historic ratings, but I do believe this is about as low as they've been. As far as the matchups on each side of the ball, I've got the Alabama offense down to number 49 in the country. The defense is number 5, though, just like you said, Kelly. Tennessee, their offense also has kind of underwhelmed relative to expectation. They're number 26 for me in the country, and the defense actually is number 17 in the country. So both defenses better than the offenses, which is not something we probably would have thought coming into the season based on recent history. Alabama is actually my second power-rated team in the SEC West. I still actually have them power-rated lower than Ole Miss. I've been on record saying I think the model is probably a little high on Ole Miss. Obviously, Alabama beat them head-to-head, which doesn't necessarily matter for power rating purposes, but I do think I'm a little high on Ole Miss. So given that Alabama already beat Ole Miss, as long as they can keep piling up conference wins, they're going to be in Atlanta. Like you said, Tennessee, number 2 in the East, in the SEC East behind Georgia. They've already got a loss to Florida, so they're kind of up against it as well in this one. But again, to summarize, I've got Alabama minus 3.5 with an over-under of 47.5. So moving on to our second marquee game, we're gonna save the best for last here. Our second marquee game, Duke travels to Florida State with some quarterback uncertainty. Quarterback Riley Leonard did not play last week against NC State. They trucked along just fine and held NC State to just 3 points and won that comfortably. In a game that I should have bet, my number said to bet it. I didn't. Biggest bet regret of last weekend was not trusting the numbers on Duke. The line on this one currently, Florida State minus 14.5 with an over-under of 49. I only project Florida State as a 6.5 point favorite here. Again, assuming Riley Leonard plays. If he doesn't, I would say he's probably worth about 5 points to the spread, which still comes up well short of where the line currently is. I've got the total projected at 52. Again, with a healthy Riley Leonard. Florida State number 8 in my power rankings, number 3 in the resume rankings, though. Duke number 11, as we've talked about on the show, they're kind of an outlier team right now, and I was super low on them coming into the season. So the fact they've climbed this far, just speaks to the performances they've had on the field, coupled with the fact that I phase out those preseason priors really aggressively. Again, like I mentioned, Duke number 11 overall in the power ranking, they're number 16 overall in the resume ranking. In terms of matchups, I've got the Florida State offense, a top 10 unit, number 9 in the country, and the Florida State defense, number 12 in the country. On the other side, I've got the Duke offense, 25. And this really speaks to why I still like the Duke side in this game, whether Riley Leonard plays or not. I've got the Duke defense in the top 5. They're the number 4 unit in the country for me on that side of the ball. So the Duke defense has been excellent. Offense has been good. That's great, but they've really been a defensively driven team for all the attention that Riley Leonard and that offense gets. I think Mike Elko has done a really good job with the defense, and I think they might be able to slow Florida State down a little bit here in this game. And Florida State's, I think when Florida State's on defense and Duke is on offense, that's probably going to be a bit of a wash. So I'm really curious to see how many points Florida State can score on this Duke defense. In the ACC, these are my top 2 teams. Florida State's my number 1 power-rated team in the ACC. Duke's my number 2. So this game is going to be an absolute battle with conference title implications, as we talked about. So I'm really excited for this one. I hope Riley Leonard plays. If he doesn't, though, again, I still like Duke and the points in this game from a betting perspective. Kelly, what do you got in this game?
I'm going to get to that conference title leverage here in a second, but Tyler, here's a stat for you first. Florida State, 19-0 all time against Duke. First meeting taking place in 1992. The Blue Devils have never beaten the Seminoles in football. I mean, that's not like overly surprising when you think about the history of these two teams, but 0-19, like you would, okay, like, yeah, that's an uphill battle. Duke, here you go. You need some extra motivation as you're taking on the favorite in your conference. They don't. I'm saying that facetiously, but here it is. You've never beaten them. Be the first Duke team to ever win against Florida State. That's something. It's not nothing. With a watchability score of 8.7 out of 10, this is the number 6 game of the week for me. I'm excited about it, though. Florida State, they put together one of the best resumes in the entire country. Seminoles ranked number 7 in relative scoring margin, number 1 in record achievement. There's only an 11% chance that the average top 25 team would be undefeated against Florida State's schedule to date. Seminole fans really loved that one on X this week. It was fun to interact with some new folks there. At 6-0, Florida State has 1.6 more wins than my preseason realistic expectations projected through week 7. That ranks number 12 nationally on my overachievers list. Put it all together, Florida State is number 2 in my most deserving rankings this week, behind only Oklahoma. I have Florida State minus 12 in this game. It's an 80% win expectancy for the Seminoles. Florida State has been power rated between number 3 and number 11 all season. They're currently number 7 with the number 12 offense, number 16 defense. For Duke, the Blue Devils will currently have a season high 13.2 KFord rating. Their corresponding number 21 ranking is also the best that they've had all season. The offense is number 26, and as you mentioned, they're getting a lot of love, but I agree with you. It's the defense that's been even more impressive. They are ranked a season high number 12 for me. With both units ranked number 12, my numbers project a pretty even matchup, between the Florida State offense and the Duke defense. But the difference for the model is the advantage that the Seminoles offense should have against this Blue Devils defense. The Seminoles defense against the Blue Devils offense. Plus, this game is in Tallahassee. Florida State, they're currently the favorite to make the ACC championship game. They have a 92% chance right now to make that game, a 64% chance by my numbers to win it. The Seminoles also currently have the second best chance to make the college football playoff at 68%. With a win, those numbers jump to 97% chance to make it to Charlotte and 77% chance to make the CFP. But with a loss, they fall to 70% and 31% respectively. So a lot to lose here for Florida State if they are knocked off by Duke for the first time. Duke, they currently have a 27% chance to make it to Charlotte. A win, though, Tyler, bumps them all the way up to a 56% chance. Better than 50-50 chance for Duke to make the ACC championship game going into the final week of October if they win this game. Raise your hand if you had that in the preseason. Everybody put your hands back down because you're lying. Nobody did, including me. That would be absolutely insane. If Duke loses this one, their chances to make it to Charlotte drop to 19%. Bottom line, I have Florida State minus 12. It's a 20% chance that Duke earns their first ever win against Florida State.
Yeah, and one last note here. It was reported earlier today. We're recording this Wednesday night. Earlier Wednesday, it was reported that Riley Leonard did return to practice. So take that for what it's worth. There is no official word on his status yet. So just keep an eye on that if you're looking at this game, from a betting perspective. All right, Kelly, it's time to talk about the big one, the one that we're both personally emotionally invested in. The Buckeyes host Penn State Saturday at noon. It's going to be insane. This series has been extremely tight. Ohio State's won the majority of these games. They've only lost, the 2016 game on a special teams play, but it's like all of these games have been tight. Ohio State always finds a way to get itself in a game with Penn State, even in years when they've been more talented, just better on both sides of the ball. They still end up in a rock fight with Penn State. James Franklin's done a good job, making this a competitive series. I'll let you do the honors here and kick us off with this one.
Put me on the shot clock, Tyler, because if you don't, I could talk about this one for like an hour. I won't. Here we go. Watchability score 9.9 out of 10. It's the number one game of the week. It's the number 2 game of the entire regular season, Tyler, in this metric, behind only Ohio State at Michigan in the final week of the regular season. As a college football fan who considers the regular season to be sacred, I could not be more excited for this game. You mentioned it, though. As an Ohio State fan, I couldn't be more nervous for this game at the exact same time. Before we dive into the predictive outlook, Tyler, I want to first just really quickly talk about the resumes because they're both really good. Ohio State is number 4 in my most deserving rankings. There's only a 17% chance that the average top 25 FBS team would be undefeated against the Buckeyes schedule. Ohio State is outscoring their opponents by 13 points per game more than would be expected of the average top 25 team against the Buckeyes schedule. On the other side, Penn State is number 10 in the most deserving rankings. Penn State fans gotten on me a little bit. They think that's too low. Bear with me for 1 second. I'll get to the opportunity that you have in a second. The Nittany Lions are number 11 in record achievement, and they're number 2 in relative scoring margin. The Nittany Lions are outscoring their opponents by 16.2 points per game, more than would be expected of the average top 25 FBS team against Penn State's schedule. That's a mark that is exceeded only by Oklahoma's 18.2 points per game more. Here it is, though. No team has a better chance to improve their resume with a win this week than Penn State. There's just an 18% win expectancy for the average top 25 team in Columbus this weekend. So I talked about Tennessee and the opportunity that the Volunteers have to improve their resume with a win in Tuscaloosa. If Penn State wins at Ohio State, no team's resume will improve more from last week to this week than the Nittany Lions. So Penn State fans, you don't like that you're most deserving ranked number 10? Win this game, I promise you, you won't be outside the top 4. You might be making a run for number 1. It depends on how everything else shakes out, of course. All that's great. I love talking about the most deserving rankings. It's kind of my favorite application that I have, actually, of the power ratings. But none of that matters a lick when it comes time to figuring out who's going to win this game and why. So from a predictive standpoint, the model has Ohio State minus 4.5. It's right in line with Vegas. It's a 62% win expectancy for the Buckeyes. For the 5th straight week, I have Ohio State number 1 in my power ratings. The defense is up to a season best number 4, while the offense is currently number 9. Kyle McCord in that offense better be ready, because this is the best opposing defense that the Buckeyes will face all season based on my current numbers. For Penn State, with a KFord rating of 24.9, this is the highest I've had the Nittany Lions power rated all year. They're currently number 4 overall with a season best number 2 defense and the number 21 offense. The defenses, since I just mentioned all the unit ranks, should have the advantage on both sides of the ball in this one. But the difference for me is the number 21 Penn State offense. That's the only unit that ranks outside the top 10 nationally for me in this game. Plus, you mentioned it, Tyler, this game is in Columbus. I think that could end up being a deciding factor in this one. This game, Tyler, is absolutely massive in the Big Ten East race and the college football playoff picture. It makes total sense when you consider these teams have been on a collision course all year, where their power ratings are, and the fact that they're both undefeated with everything still in front of them. But to boil it down to numbers, currently Ohio State, this is all by my numbers, Ohio State has a 37% chance to make the Big Ten championship and a 36% chance to make the CFP. Remember, last year they made the CFP without making the Big Ten championship. So you could say, how are those numbers so close? We saw just last year how the CFP number was 100 and making the Big Ten was 0. So that's where we are currently. With a win, those numbers jump to a 53% chance to make it to Indy and 58% chance to make the 4-team playoff field. But with a loss, Tyler, Ohio State falls to just an 11% chance to win the East and just a 3% chance to make the playoff. That's a lot of pressure on this Ohio State team, who is very open about their goals every year. Beat the team up north, as they say, win the Big Ten, and win the national championship. You lose this game, doesn't affect your number one goal, but your number 2 and number 3 goals take a massive hit. There's a ton of pressure on this Ohio State team, and I don't think Buckeye fans want to hear it, but that's the reality. For Penn State, currently the Nittany Lions have a 30% chance to make the Big Ten championship and a 26% chance to make the CFP. With a win, those numbers jump to 52 or 56 and 62% respectively. Note that both of those are better than Ohio State's chances with a win. So the ceiling, the upside here for Penn State is higher in both of those respects than it is for Ohio State. But with a loss, the Nittany Lions fall to just a 14% chance to make it to Indy and a 5% chance to make the CFP. I know that was a lot of numbers, a lot of percentages. Go to the website, KFordratings.com. I got the leverage graphics up there. It outlines it very clearly. But I thought it was very important to outline exactly what's on the line for both these teams. Bottom line, Tyler, I have Ohio State minus 4.5. It's a 38% chance that Penn State earns their first win against the Buckeyes since 2016 and their first win in Columbus since 2011.
So, wow. We knew
that. I told you I could have talked for an hour, dude. I told you. I gave you warning.
I knew the stakes were high in this game, but you outlined the paths, to Indianapolis and to the playoff for these teams. Particularly for Penn State, that makes sense though, that they would have the most to gain here with the win because they get Michigan at home, whereas Ohio State has to go to Ann Arbor. So
exactly.
that makes total sense. So now that you've outlined what's at stake, I'm now probably going to get myself booted out of Buckeye Nation. So I currently project Penn State as a 0.5-point favorite in this game.
Wow.
With a total of 52.5. The current over-under sitting at 45.5, so I'm a bit higher on that. A little uncomfortable being that much higher, just how I personally think this game is going to play out. But Penn State has jumped up to number 2 in my power rankings, with a power rating of 28 points above FBS average. They're now my number 1 team in the Big Ten East. They're number 8 in the resume ranking. We're pretty close here on these teams in the resume ranking. Ohio State is number 6 for me in the power ranking with a power rating of 24.8. They're number 5 in my resume rankings, number 3 in the Big Ten East behind Penn State and Michigan. In terms of how these teams match up, I've actually got the Penn State offense number 4. And I'm a little uncomfortable with that because this is where a team like Michigan is so much different than Penn State. When Michigan plays against lesser opponents, they generally, I guess the last couple of weeks notwithstanding, but generally speaking, Jim Harbaugh will get a 28, 30-point lead and take his foot off the gas and kind of coast. Whereas James Franklin wants to really bury these teams and really run those stats up. So I think Penn State's offense might be a little bit inflated in my numbers because of James Franklin's kind of mentality in those games, because they haven't played a great schedule and he's really run it up and scored kind of some late touchdown drives in games that were already pretty much won that other teams like Michigan or Ohio State might not have gotten. So I think their offense might be a bit inflated. Nonetheless, they're number 4 for me in the country. Their defense is number 6. I've got the Ohio State offense as the lowest rated unit in this game at number 14, but the Ohio State defense is my number 1 defense in the country. So this is going to be a defensive battle, I think. One thing, and this is not necessarily my numbers, it's just in doing my own research, but one thing to keep an eye on in this game, for as efficient as Penn State has been and as many points as they've put up, a lot of that has come on short fields that have been handed to them by their defense. Their offense has not really had to do a lot of heavy lifting. I'm pretty sure they're dead last in terms of Power 5 teams in explosive plays. So I think the path to victory for Ohio State here is let that trend continue. Don't let anything get behind you, and don't turn the ball over and give Penn State short fields, and make them do something they haven't done all year. Now, on the flip side, if you're Penn State, Kyle McCord has kind of gotten away, with some loose throws here and there, most notably in the Notre Dame game that very easily could have cost him the game on that final drive. He has been a little loose with it at times. So if you're Penn State, if you turn Kyle McCord over and give your offense those short fields, they've shown a propensity to be able to punch those into the end zone for touchdowns. So there's certainly a path to victory here for both teams. My number being what it is on the game, indicates it is literally going to come down to the wire. From a betting perspective here, I wouldn't dare bet against my team, but the numbers indicate, Penn State and the points would be the side here. Honestly, most books offer a will the game go to overtime prop bet, and that's usually like plus 12,000 to the yes. Like, if you can get some crazy odds on the game to go to overtime, it might be worth a sprinkle here based on my projection here of literally a 50% win probability for both teams. So this one's going to come down to the wire. Kelley outlined the percentages of what's at stake in terms of how this is going to affect the conference race and the CFP. I'm going to be a nervous wreck. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great game. Kelley, any last thoughts here on Penn State, Ohio State before we put a bow on it and we both hold our breath until Saturday at 4 p.m.?
Yeah, I mean, since you said it, and the game is at noon, and so the risk that I run there is, hey, listen, I'm a college football fan, just like anybody watching this or listening to this. We're college football fans. That's why we're tuned in. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing here with you, Tyler. And we all have teams. We have our favorite teams. We have our secondary teams, whatever. Ohio State's my favorite team. They always have been. They always will be, win or lose. More winning than losing for Ohio State, which has been fun. But what that means is when Ohio State does lose, it cuts pretty deep. And I could see this being a Saturday where if Ohio State loses, I mean, I turn my phone off. Like I kind of check out of things when Ohio State loses a game. And I've always been that way. I have to be careful with that now since I'm responsible, if you will, for putting out some college football content, after Saturday. So it'll be back on Sunday morning. I won't be happy about it. But if Ohio State loses this game, the phone's off and I'm still watching the rest of the slate. I'm always going to watch, but I'll be pretty ticked off about it. If they win, the phone comes back on and I'm a little bit more joyful in posting, the setup on, hey, we're in the afternoon window. Hey, we're in the primetime window. This is one of those games. And it's why players go to Ohio State and Penn State. It's why you want to be at big time programs to play in big time games. And this is one of those. Here's the thing that I love about sport, Tyler, is it gives you the opportunity to be successful. And in games like this, you got two titans, two really good teams, 50-50, or that's what your numbers say. My numbers say it's a 62% chance for Ohio State, like whatever it is. In sports, though, both teams go out on the field, on the court, on the rink, whatever platform you're playing on, whatever surface you're playing on, and hopefully the best team wins. It doesn't always work that way, but the team at the end of the day that has accumulated more points, they walk out with a victory. And that's what I love about sports is you have the opportunity to go earn it, and you have to live with the consequences of a win or a loss. Us fans, we don't have any control over that. We're at the mercy of these kids that are out there playing. That's what they are. They're kids. Don't get mad at the kids if they lose or make mistakes. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But get upset if your team loses, because that's what I do. Shut that phone off and just eat it because you have to. But that would be my closing thought. Don't text me. This isn't you. This is everybody. Don't text me. Don't call me. Don't email me on Saturday because my phone's off. And if Ohio State loses, it's not coming back on until Sunday morning. I'm just telling you right now.
I put out a poll on X this week. Which coach do you trust more in a one-possession game, Ryan Day or James Franklin? And, my following probably skews more Ohio State fans than Penn State fans, but it was like I got over 600 responses, and it was 90% Ryan Day. So I thought that was amusing. But you guys heard it here first. If Ohio State loses, calculated risk will be canceled until further notice.
That's hilarious. No, hey, one more thing. I know I already used my time. One more thing, though, about the James Franklin, because it came up on a different platform that I was speaking on, too. What James Franklin's record is against Ohio State and Michigan since he's been at Penn State. I think it's like 1-8 or something like that. And the comment was saying, well, he just can't win these games. And I said, fair. I get it. And you can't dispute the record. That is what it is. You mentioned, Tyler, there's been some really close ones in this series. Close isn't good enough. It's not horseshoes and hand grenades here. This is football. Close isn't good enough. I get that. But there was a time not too long ago where the narrative around Jim Harbaugh was he couldn't beat Ohio State or, in his case, Michigan State. Well, that script flipped, and it hasn't flipped back. I mean, all it takes is one game to turn that thing on its head. That game can come at any time. Your numbers are saying it's 50-50, could be this weekend. Mine are a little bit less, but it's still a good chance that it could be this weekend. All it takes is one game, and all of the sudden, all the haters, all the doubters, all the he can't get it done dies, and it goes away, at least until the next time they play. but nobody wants this win more, I don't think, than James Franklin, because he knows what they say. Hey, you can't win this one. This is the one that always gets away. You can't win the big ones. He hears it. He knows this is probably his best team. If this game was in Happy Valley, we'd be having a different conversation. The fact that Ohio State caught this one at home is a big break for the Buckeyes, but we'll see, because Penn State is a really good football team.
Yep, no doubt. All right, well, that's our marquee matchups of the week. We're going to do our rapid fire here and hit on a few other notable games across the country that have conference title race implications or just are good high-profile games. We're going to start Thursday night game, Marshall hosting James Madison in the Sun Belt. Huge game for that conference. James Madison's been a juggernaut lately. Line currently, James Madison minus 3.5 with an over-under of 49.5. I project James Madison minus 8.5 with a total of 60.
I'm between you and Vegas. I have James Madison minus 4.5, 63% win expectancy for the Dukes.
All right, next up, we've got Miami, the U, hosting Clemson. Clemson, a 3-point road favorite here with a total of 48.5. I actually project Miami as a 4-point home favorite with a total of 56.5.
I've got this as a straight up pick 'em. I got Clemson 50% win expectancy, just over. It's like 50.3. So Clemson is my technical outright winner here, but 50% chance to win, 50% chance to lose. Straight up pick 'em. Miami needs a win like none other after the last couple of weeks they've had. Clemson, a win keeps their season somewhat on track, and they've only lost 2 games, and it's not what they wanted, but hey, they could really build some momentum here down the stretch.
Yep, no doubt. So the other Miami, Miami of Ohio hosting Toledo in what very well could be a MAC championship preview. These are the top teams in their division per TSI right now. Toledo currently a 2-point road favorite with a total of 48.5. I project Toledo as a 1-point favorite with a total of 52.
I have in this one Miami as a 1-point favorite, 53% chance to win this game outright. Yes, the winner here is in great shape to win their respective division in the MAC.
And the TSI number 1, Oklahoma, off of a bye, hosting UCF. Line currently Oklahoma minus 18.5 with an over-under of 66. I project Oklahoma minus 33.5 with a total of 63.
KFord rating number 2, Oklahoma, has the Sooners minus 24.5 in this one, 96% win expectancy for Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I actually checked your website earlier on this because I did bet Oklahoma minus the points here. Another game I bet, Oregon hosting Washington State. Oregon currently a 20-point favorite with an over-under of 62. I project Oregon minus 26 with a total of 61.5.
Oregon minus 23 for me, 95% win expectancy for the Ducks.
All right, and our last rapid fire here, fresh off their beatdown against Notre Dame, USC is hosting Utah. USC currently a 7-point favorite with an over-under of 53. I project USC as an 8-point favorite with a total of 55.
The model was all over Utah in both of these matchups last year. Took some heat for it. The Utes won them both. This time it likes USC minus 7.5, 71% win expectancy for the Trojans. But Utah, if they can pull this one off, Tyler, this is probably the last time these two teams play for a good long while. Utah fans will be able to say to USC fans, hey, 4 straight, we've beaten your boys, as USC heads to the Big Ten and Utah heads to the Big 12. They'll have that 4-game win streak for, I imagine, quite a long time until these two teams, if ever, meet in a non-conference game or a bowl game down the road.
Yeah, I would think so. It's crazy that they've got a 3-game win streak, and if they win this one, like you said, it's going to hold up for a while, I would think. But all right, that's going to do it. We're going to put a bow on this, and I look forward to the weekend, watching Week 8. Hopefully it goes our way in the biggest game. We will be back on Monday with our recap of Week 8. Hopefully Kelly and I are in a good mood, and we don't have to cancel the show or anything, because we appreciate you guys. Make sure you get subscribed to the channel, Saturday Glory on YouTube. Subscribe to the Calculated Risk podcast on your podcast platform of choice. Until next time, for Kelley Ford, I'm Tyler Shoemaker, and that was Calculated Risk.